on item 2 of our agenda, hearing of delegations and or individuals who wish to address the board. For many of you, I know this is your first or second board meeting, so there are some rules governing this. It is a public comment section of our board meeting, so you will have 5 minutes, less if you want, but no more than 5 minutes to make comments to the board. It is very much a one-way conversation. We will not respond, but we will listen. I will, for convenience, I've got an iPad, hopefully with a screen big enough, you can see the time remaining. I will call you up one at a time. You can stay where you are. If you'd like to come closer, you're more than welcome wherever you're comfortable. And I'd ask when the timer goes off and you see the countdown stop, to try and finish in 1 or 2 sentences, otherwise we'll have to cut you off. The first person that we have, Mark Parker. Mark is here.
Hello. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
I would like to thank the school board for having this meeting. I feel as though it was the right thing to do and the very least thing that should have been done. Regrettably, this is the second sexual assault matter that has happened during the school hours or school events that I'm aware of, both still ongoing active events right now. As the details of these 2 cases are different, there is one underlying constant: our children were not protected. The good old boy system of covering up and making light of the situation instead of addressing it for the tragedy that it is totally not acceptable. And it leaves people to wonder how much more has been swept under the rug. This event is making headlines, and the news has reached as far as San Francisco. It has impacted every student and citizen, as I am sure it has reached most kitchen tables in this town. It brings disgrace to our city and to Texas schools as a whole, as every parent with a school-aged child went in horror. It also takes the validity away from any success that the team may have acquired this season. For this is what the season will be remembered for, not the victories. While I presume neither guilt nor innocence of those involved, charges have been filed. To err on the side of caution until matters are investigated is common sense and the right thing to do, especially when children are involved. Putting those that have been charged on administrative leave should be protocol, as it is in other professions that take the same oath. There are a lot of questions that I understand cannot be answered at this time due to the investigation. However, upon the conclusion of the investigation, all the facts of the matter from Hondo to Hallettsville will be made public. I thank God and the media for bringing this to light and helping us protect our children. My final thoughts are that if you receive money from taxpayers to do your job, then do that job correctly. Protect our children and be fair for all. Or resign and let someone else be burdened with that task. Let your conscience be your guide. There is more than just Hallettsville watching.
Next we have Rachel Harding.
Good evening. I've seen it mentioned several times that it is okay for the 3 school officials arrested to still hold the important offices that they do, because the safety of the children does not seem to be at risk. That these 3 individuals do not pose any threat of direct physical harm to any one particular student. Well, these men are not being charged for abuse. These men are being charged with the intent to conceal alleged abuse by a different party. No one has implied that these men intend to do physical harm to a child. The issue at hand is the fact that these men did not do their legal obligation of reporting the possibility or the even suspicion of abuse. Let me be clear, abuse did not have to happen for them to be required to report it. Quoting Dr. Beluda, open quote, based on the information currently available to it. The district does not believe that any of its employees acted inappropriately. It is our understanding that those employees did not report anything because after looking into the matter, they did not believe there was anything to report, close quote. I was shocked to read this statement. It is at minimum an admission of guilt. It also implies that our own superintendent is in the dark about the laws with which her own employees are supposed to abide by. If it is not a lack of knowledge, it is an egregious abuse of power. According to Texas law, no one school official is to determine the validity of the complaint or allegation of abuse, ever. Their legal obligation is only to take the suspicion of abuse and within 48 hours, pass it on to the trained professionals that we all rely on. How do we decide that local school administrators now have the necessary training to investigate any case, let alone something that is this serious? Hallettsville Pharmacy was recently broken into. Did we call these 3 men? Or did I in fact see 4 police cars on the scene? My next concern is very simple. How many students that may run into conflict in this school, since it is simply something that happens between children who are around each other daily, are now going to suffer in silence for the fear that if and when they report what is happening to them, our officials will not only neglect their needs, but in fact say that they don't believe them. So, these men may not be a physical danger to any one child, but they have become dangerous in a very large sense by placing on themselves responsibilities that legally they never should have put on themselves. In closing, I would like to say that removing these men from the school is not a conviction of guilt from you. It is an act of faith. Where the Lord gives much, much is expected. Thank you.
Next we have Jocelyn Williams.
Good evening. I stand in front of the board this day to express my concerns and recite the facts in regards to the 3 school officials that were arrested on HISD campus April 30th, 2019. Fact number 1, Friday, April 26th, 2019, a grand jury met and deliberated over evidence for several hours, which resulted in the majority to agree that Mr. Bickham, Mr. Cottonware, and Coach Cook needed to be arrested. Fact number 2, Mr. Bickham, Mr. Cottonware, and Coach Cook were indicted and arrested on school campus during school hours for failure to report abuse, a state jail felony. Fact number 3, all men are still under investigation. As a parent, a former student, and a proud fan, this incident has truly disturbed me. The most disturbing part for me is the actions taken by the adults involved. At the very least, these 3 individuals should be put on administrative leave. The message that they are sending by remaining on campus while under an investigation for abuse is that no one else matters. As a leader, oftentimes you have to put others and their feelings in front of your very own. That's what a great leader does. A great leader in the time of trouble will find a solution, even if it means the sacrifice on the leader's part. All accomplishments and adversaries that the baseball team have withstood have been overshadowed because their leaders not only let them down by failing to report abuse, but also let them down by not putting this district first. I'm asking that until this investigation is closed and the truth is revealed, that these 3 men take leave. I understand and sympathize that they have bills to pay and families to feed, but they also have a responsibility to this district and this community. And right now, both are in turmoil because of their actions. Please consider my request for Mr. Bickham, Mr. Cottonware, and Coach Cook to take leave from this campus until investigation is closed.
Kevin Bright.
Trustee, Webster defines this as any group or board of persons appointed to manage the affairs of an institution. I'd like to first thank the Board of Trustees for allowing our voice to be spoken and heard in this proceeding. My grandmother started off sending 6 kids through this school back in the 1940s. My mother rode a horse along with her brothers and sisters. I graduated from this high school. My sister went to this high school. 2 of my sons graduated from this high school. One of them's in Afghanistan right now, and I pray that one day my grandchildren will be able to go to this school. I have a concern for what goes on in this community. I do believe, as the superintendent has been quoted, that the 3 educators in this issue would never intentionally physically abuse or harm a student of this school or any school. However, their lack of legally required action has led to this day. I do not believe they alone are to blame. Their failure to do their due diligence has created an almost hostile environment for our students, fellow teachers, themselves, and the tax-paying citizens of this community. And yes, it has divided our community. I truly believe that environment was created long before the 4th of March of 2019. Any person arrested has the right to bail and a fair trial. If bond is posted, you are released. You are obligated to certain bond conditions. In those conditions, normally, you are to report any contact with law enforcement, no matter how minor, and to not have any contact with the reported victim. This board has placed those arrested in potential of having their bond rescinded and sent back to jail. If you doubt that, I remind you that there are those who doubted the grand jury would even indict. Becky Yannock said it best in a recent article, Think Again. These are good people who may have made bad choices and now must face the consequences for their actions, or better said, the lack of actions. We are not here today about legal justice. We are here about administrative action. In the military and in the business, ultimate responsibility falls on the leadership to ensure the proper procedures are followed. This board has a hard but simple decision, a decision not based on friendship, but on that of duty to one's given responsibility. The rules and the guidelines are set forth for the safety and protection of all. Our goal is not to be judge and jury to the accused. That is for the court. But we should not allow the 2 sides to interact. It can only lead to more heartache or worse, more criminal charges. Discipline and standards must be set, maintained, and not compromised or covered up in any way. Sometimes it is not so much a question of right or wrong, but what is fair for all. Life has its cause and effect. Every person and every action creates that situation. There may be another phase to this setting. Let's not hope that it goes to a vote of no confidence. The question is, whose name would go on that list? Mr. Lundy, one question for you as the president of the board, and I did hear what you said at the beginning. In every organization, there is an atmosphere of cooperation between each element, but someone or some board is still in charge. In our final day, we all have to answer to God, but here on earth, we all have to answer to someone. As a soldier, I have to answer to my commander and to the soldiers appointed me for their very life. So my question is this: does the board answer to the school staff, or does the school staff answer to the board? Thank you.
Next we have Mary Bright.
Please let me first thank you for allowing me the time to speak and to be heard. I understand that we should not judge others, but for many of us, we've already been down this road. For us not to believe the failure of our staff members is not judging, it's already knowing how this school operates. The current situation is just the straw that broke the camel's back in this school's many cover-ups. This school has been projecting that reputation for years. And let's not forget, they couldn't have been indicted if there wasn't evidence. It was said everyone makes mistakes, Yes, everyone makes mistakes and falls short of the glory of God. But let me tell you, violating someone, turning a blind eye to it, is no simple mistake. There is no greater pain in this world than seeing the embarrassment, the confusion, and the pain in your child's eyes when they've been violated or severely mistreated. I want each and every one of you to think of your son, your daughter, maybe a grandchild. What if this happened to them? Picture the hurt in their eyes, and you are unable to take it away or change it. In 10 to 20 years from now, nobody's going to remember who won state. But I promise you what happened to this young man will live with him the rest of his life. As for the staff members and the perpetrators, they should all be answering for what they did. And as of right now, each one of you is showing the community that you are not willing to hold them accountable for their actions. Is that the example this administration wants to set? Do you truly want to show the other students and parents, don't bother to report any abuse because HISD is not going to believe you, they're not going to support you, and they're not going to help you? I certainly hope not, because the next time could be somebody you love. If it were your child or your grandchild that got hurt, would you be making the same decisions? Would you publicly state that you believe your staff done no wrong if it was your own flesh and blood? The Bible says that you will reap what you sow. Before you make any decisions, I pray and hope that you remember that. You have the ability and the obligation to do what is right. Or are you only worried about saving face? If this administration does not stand up for not only this young man, but every student and parent, then you're going to show us what kind of people you truly are, what kind of heart you have. And that's not the kind of people we want running our schools and tending to our children. Should that be the case, then maybe it's time for Hallettsville to drain the swamp of HISD's administration. Thank you.
Next we have Terry Potek.
I'd like to thank the board for allowing me to speak. I'm not going to stand up here and read off somebody wrote for me or bring God into this. I'm just here. I'll be doing the same thing if I'm going to spout my opinions on what went on. You're saying this boy was violated. We don't know that. That's your opinion, just like my opinion, he wasn't. So I'm not going to stand here and talk about stuff like that. I'm going to vouch for the character of the three men because I know them all personally. First of all, the baseball coach. I've known the man over 40 years. I played ball with him, played against him, umpire games that he's called. I've had family members on his team, a kid on his team now. If you think I'd let my kids stay on that team if I thought something like that was going on and they didn't do anything about it, you're crazy, okay? The man is one of the most disciplined coaches I've ever been around. He's very strict on the boys. He's very concerned about those boys. He constantly checks on those boys, make sure they're doing the right things, they're at home and doing the things they should be doing. Okay, I don't know, Mr. Bickham have known him this long, or, Coach Cottonwire, but I've been around them and watched them coach ball games or watched them interact with kids. They have kids, my kids' age, and I know them personally. I watch how they interact with them. They do well with kids. They would never allow something like that to happen if that were true. And we're going out there saying that these boys were violated or whatever was going on. That's your opinion. That's what you probably read in the news media. But we don't know that for a fact because they have not finished the investigation yet. So we are to withhold all our comments on things like that, regular social media, until we know those are facts before we ruin people's lives. Because God forbid I want that to happen in my job. Someone accused me of something and I get put out because someone just accused me. Because we know how people are today. They accuse for everything. And the people go away, but the accuser, when it comes out, they've made a false accusation. That never happens to them. They go on. So I'd like to say, hope it never happens to any of you in your jobs, that something like that put on you, but these are good men. I would vouch for their character, and I hope y'all keep them on. They deserve to stay on.
Floyd, and then one looks, I can't tell if it's John,
Starts with a W.
or maybe it's not John.
E. Is there anyone else, if you could raise your hand if you signed up to address the board? There's an Eric Lloyd. Okay.
Which, sir, which were you?
My name's Rick Harding.
Rick Clark? Let me double check. Who is Eric Lloyd? Is there, there's Eric. Okay, 1 second. Mr. Harding, we're not finding your name on the sheet. There's possibly a name, but it says no by addressing the board.
I can't see what you're saying.
Sorry, we're not finding your name on the
I
sheet.
thought that sheet said, no, I had not signed up to speak, but I wanted to speak. Wasn't that the speak
If he
all?
wants to address it, then you should. He didn't.
Okay, that's fine.
Fine.
Come on, Mr.
Is that
Harding.
okay?
Yes,
Come on.
come on forward.
I'll talk down here, but I can lean against the wall. I'm not sure I can stand up. I think that what's going on here is a couple of things. We don't know what happened in Hondo. What we do know is that there was an incident in Hondo that caused people to have a concern that something may have happened to a child. Something. We don't know what happened. What we do know, sitting in this room right here, is that the Hallettsville grand jury, actually the Lockett County grand jury, deliberated for 9 hours, listening to all of the evidence that we haven't heard, the evidence from Hondo and the evidence from Hallettsville, and they came back with indictments for all 3 of these men, not because there was child abuse, but because these men thought that there was enough child abuse possibility that they tried to cover it up. That's why they got the felony. They didn't get arrested and given a felony charge because they didn't report child abuse. They got arrested in a felony charge because whatever happened in Hondo, they thought it was important enough to try to cover up. Now, if I was one of those 3 men, I would not, and I was in a position of power as a principal or vice principal, I would not have my trial tainted by the possibility of someone saying, well, in your position of power, you affected, influenced, bullied, intimidated someone who was a witness or a potential witness, either a child or an adult, by your position of power in the school. The children see you're still there. If I was a coach or I was the principal or vice principal charged with a felony of this important charge, I would want to be removed from any possibility of tainting my trial so that when I got a not guilty of my trial, I could say I'm innocent because I didn't taint the jury. And that's all I want to say.
Eric Lloyd?
Hello, everybody. Well, kind of reiterating what he said, we don't really, none of us here really know what happened. All we know what happened is something did occur and there was no action taken by anybody. It appears that way to make anything right about it. It took this meeting for anything to happen. Like I said, we don't know what happened because we haven't heard the evidence, but it appears that no action was taken at first and it had to take something like this to get something going. And that's just very disappointing. That's all.
sorry, there's one name we can't make out. Is there anybody else that had wished to address the board that we have not called yet? Okay.
I'd like to speak. I'm not on the list, and in fact, when I signed in, I checked off no that I did not want to speak, but I've changed my mind. Can I have 3, 4, or 5 minutes, or not? If we have time, I'd like to say a few things.
Make one exception, we make one more. Let's do last one. Go ahead.
Okay.
Your name, sir?
I'm Marlon Jordan. I'm the geometry teacher here at the high school. My son is Trace Jordan, who is the right fielder for the baseball team, who was actually in the room when these alleged incidents occurred. And if I had any, as a single parent, his mom lives in Katy. We moved from Katy last January. And if I had an issue with Shorty Cook or with Darren Bickham or with Scott Cottonware, I mean, he is my only child. I mean, there is, in fact, we left a situation in Katy that was less than desirable. But why would we volunteer to come into another one? That makes no sense. And I will say this. I drove 91 miles back to Katy and left my only son here in town when his mother was back in Katy with full trust of these individuals and my son's family to boot here in Hallettsville. And I can tell you, I understand why there are certain members of the community that are upset because they're listening and reading what's been printed out there in the Victoria Advocate that is a book. In fact, the alleged victim's family had to call that media outlet to get them to retract statements that were not true. Now, if I'm on your side, I'm feeling probably the way you do. But you need to take a step back and allow this investigation to go forward and to its conclusion, because right now, I know the things that have occurred according to my son who was actually in the room when it occurred, and nothing happened. There was nothing to report. That's the reason why they didn't report it. Now, if the investigation uncovers something that we don't know already, that my son hasn't told me, or the other individuals don't know about, then that's what they're there for. But all this other stuff is nothing more than a witch hunt at this point. Let the investigators finish the investigation and stay in your lane.
We'll thank everybody for their comments. Thank you for everybody's calm and respect in this situation. At this time, we are going to adjourn into executive session of Texas Government Code, section 551.071, section 551.074, and section 551.082. It is 6:31.